Hello everyone, I'm currently at Wuhan railway station. My original plan was to challenge myself to travel by bus from the northernmost to the southernmost part of Wuhan. But I encountered a small problem. Since I live in the city center, traveling back and forth would require 2 trips, which is difficult to complete in one day. So I slightly modified my itinerary. On the first day, I'll travel to the northernmost part of Wuhan and return. On the second day, I'll travel to the southernmost part and return. The round trip times can serve as a reference and also help to account for unexpected factors such as traffic jams and accidents. Bus number 706 departs at 8:40 a.m. The bus's final stop was near the Wuhan Civic Center. It traversed the city, passing through many alleyways, and it was during the morning rush hour. The bus moved in and out of traffic, crawling along for almost half the way. Therefore, I didn't get off until 10:25 a.m., a journey that took 1 hour and 45 minutes. It takes nearly 2 hours. The final stop of this bus is several hundred meters away from the next bus stop, requiring a walk. If you are unlucky and the previous bus has just departed, you will have to wait a long time. That should be the bus stop in the distance. The bus in front is about to leave. I'm not sure if it's the one I need to take. I was looking at the bus stop sign when the bus I needed pulled in. These are 2 bus stops next to each other, not far apart. Luckily, I came in time. It stopped ahead, and I quickly caught up. It's 10:40 now. This trip involved taking a high-speed bus that traveled entirely on the highway, with only 1 stop in between. The destination was the passenger transport center in the northern suburbs, where passengers would need to transfer to a rural bus.
下一站，黄皮大道彭家田，请需要下车的乘客提前做好下车准备。
About 40 minutes later, the bus arrived at the toll station. From there, it would take another 10 minutes to drive along a municipal road to reach the passenger transport center. The bus has arrived at the station. It's 11:20 now. The rural bus stop is right next to where we're getting off. Let's hurry up, or we will have to wait a long time if we miss one. The area here is quite large and it's accessible to many towns and villages. Thankfully, we now have mobile maps. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to find a specific departure point. Luckily, I managed to catch a bus that was about to depart, and there was still 1 seat left in the last row. The bus was traveling on the provincial highway, and the whole journey would take 90 minutes. It would have been difficult if there were no seats available. Once you leave the built-up area, the road surface is lined with these rural houses, which look fairly tidy. Considering this is a main road, the houses inside might not be as nice, though. This is a residential area, most likely demolished and developed into a tourist area. In rural China, if a village is demolished, farmers are generally no longer allowed to build detached houses. Instead, they are relocated to make way for urban residential communities. Sometimes you will find a lonely community, which is the result of such demolition. This is a tourist attraction called Mulan Flower Village, named after Hua Mulan, a legendary figure from ancient China who disguised herself as a man to join the army in place of her father. This place claims to be her hometown, although the historical accuracy of this figure is uncertain, given that it happened 1,500 years ago. Nevertheless, many places in China are vying for this title. The competition for the title of hometown of historical figures is fierce across China in the pursuit of tourism development. At 12:55, the bus arrived at its destination, 车站 village. This place is where 3 counties and districts meet, and these 3 counties and districts belong to 3 different prefecture-level cities. Now, I will spend more than 4 hours to get here. I left at 8:40 a.m. and it's almost 1 p.m. now. It took me about 4 hours and 15 minutes, including the waiting time for 2 buses. Luckily, I was fortunate and didn't have to wait too long for either bus. The bridge I'm crossing now is the boundary bridge between Huangpi district of Wuhan City and Dawu County of Xiaogan City. On the other side is Hekou town of Dawu County. This is where 2 rivers meet. We are currently on the Xida River, and the one that flows into it in the distance is the Sheshui River. Now, I've arrived at Hekou town, which belongs to Dawu County, Xiaogan City. Clearly, Hekou town is far more prosperous than Chezhan village. This is a unique characteristic of China. When a more developed administrative region borders an underdeveloped one, the underdeveloped region tends to develop by building high rises near the developed region, while the border of the developed region often becomes more desolate. This is true of the border between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, as well as the border between Suzhou in Jiangsu and Shanghai. Of course, Shenzhen is not comparable to Hong Kong in terms of overall development. Like Japan, most of the township population in China has settled in the city, leaving mostly the elderly. After crossing this bridge, we entered Shangxinji town, Hong'an County, Huanggang City. This is the Sheshui River, and the downstream flows into Yangtze River in Wuhan. This place is noticeably quieter. While there is still many 10-story buildings in Hekou town, here there are only 2 or 3-story self-built houses. This is a typical small town. It's much more lively than small towns in Japan. At least you can see people on the street. So, let's go back to Hekou town and take a look. Across the river, you can see residential areas typical of cities, and it looks like there are also some unfinished buildings. These unfinished buildings are unlikely to be completed in a long time. Who would buy a house here? Here, you will find things you don't see in the city. Cars with unregistered license plates. There weren't many people on the street. It was mostly middle-aged and elderly people, with very few young people. It looked quite lively from a distance, like a small shopping mall. And now it's mainly a large supermarket, and there's also a Mishu ice cream shop downstairs. I was getting hungry, so I decided to grab a quick bite at a small roadside restaurant. I'll go back after eating. It was past lunchtime, so I was the only one there. The hospital in Hekou town is also labeled as the second People's Hospital of Dawu County, a designation typically reserved for large towns. As a town just a stone's throw from Wuhan, many of the private cars parked on the roadside here have Wuhan license plates. There were even children in a snack shop. I wonder if they live here. Many of the people here may be working and settled in Wuhan, only coming back on weekends to visit their elders. Okay, I'm back at the station now, since the one-way trip here took more than 4 hours. The return trip will probably be about the same time. The two young men on motorcycles behind me are among the few young people I saw on this trip. Around 2:30 p.m., I boarded the bus for the return trip. At approximately 5 to 4, I arrived at a suburban bus station, about 85 minutes, similar to the 90 minutes it took to get there. At 5 past 4, the second bus trip departed. At 15 to 5, the second leg of the journey arrived, taking 40 minutes, the same time as the outbound journey. This leg of bus took the highway. It's 14 to 5, and because there were no traffic lights and little traffic congestion, the journey was almost perfect timed.
乘客您好，为了您的安全。
The last bus stop is quite a distance away. I have to cross a metro station and walk another block. The bus departs at 5 p.m. This leg of journey was the shortest, but also the longest, because it completely traversed the city center with many narrow roads, and both the outward and return trips took place during rush hour. To make matters worse, I also encountered a minor car accident along the way. It didn't seem serious, but the person involved started arguing right there in the middle of the road and showed no intention of moving the car. By the time I crossed the Yangtze River again on my return journey, it was completely dark. At this moment, the yellow crane tower in front of me was already lit up, and it looked truly beautiful. At 6:50 p.m., after nearly 2 hours, I finally arrived at my starting point, Wuhan railway station. Today, I finished the second half of the challenge. It's much closer to the south from here. Looking at the map, the straight line distance to the north is 87 kilometers, while the straight line distance to the south is only 60 kilometers. Therefore, today I only need to take 2 buses and transfer once. I left home much later than yesterday. I got on the bus at 12:10. The bus passed through many urban rural fringe areas. I got off at 1 p.m. and this trip took less than an hour. Unfortunately, today wasn't as smooth as yesterday. The transfer was still at a different station, requiring me to walk several hundred meters. Just before I arrived at the transfer station, the bus I needed to take had just passed by, which meant I would have to wait for the next one, which would take a lot more time. When I boarded the next bus, it was already 1:20 p.m. It seemed that the bus would depart in 20 minutes. This was the only transfer that wasn't at the starting station in the past 2 days, so there were no seats left when I got on. Fortunately, although the bus was crowded, passengers got off quickly, and I soon got a seat in the front wheel. This bus was responsive, which meant that if you wanted to get off, you had to press the bell in advance. Otherwise, the driver would not stop unless someone at the station called you to get on. At 2:15 p.m., I arrived at the final stop. This trip took almost an hour, but including the waiting time, it only took a little over 2 hours for the whole trip. There's still several hundred meters away from the border between Wuhan and Xianing. So, let's go. Very interesting place. First thing you see here is a row of restaurants advertising local chicken soup. For outsiders, this place is more famous for the Northern Expedition 100 years ago, when the Northern Expeditionary Army defeated the army of warlord Hu Peifu here. There's nearly no young people on the street. at this time, I'm now standing on the border between Wuhan and Xianing. After walking for about half an hour, I finally reached the border between the two cities. It was much quieter here than the northern towns I visited yesterday, so I decided to head back. At 3:10 p.m., I walked back to the station and boarded the bus back. On the return trip, I took a different bus with a different route. I could see that the road here seemed to be being widened, and there was a construction going on along the roadside. A grand passenger transport center can be seen in the distance, but it is not yet in use. Given the severe population loss in rural areas, will there be a demand for this type of station? At 4:15 p.m., I had to change my plans due to other matters, but the challenge was successfully completed.